Okay. So for the next move, what we're going to do is we're going to look at reflections. So this is sort of flipping our graph, either sort of a left-right flip or an up-down flip. We'll kind of name these a little bit as we go. This has to do with different negative values. So if we sort of multiply by a -1, or sort of attach a negative in front of different parts of our graph, it has this sort of flipping behavior, and sort of where we put the negative makes a difference. So we're going to have two things. We can kind of organize these a little bit, right? So these are our sort of shifts, right? Sort of left, right, and up and down. And the next section will be reflections. I'm not sure quite how long this is going to be. I'll put these examples on first, and then we'll label it. So the first thing is to do negative of f of x. Right, I guess if we stick with our sort of x squared example, so this is f of x is x squared. So the negative version of f of x, so everybody's sort of favorite example, right? So this is negative of x squared, right? Which we would sort of end up writing as negative x squared like this. So we're just taking whatever the formula is, the entire formula, and putting a negative in front of it. If it's a polynomial or something that has like multiple parts, sort of added or subtracted together, if you put a negative in front of it, obviously then that's going to sort of flip all of your positive and negative signs throughout the whole example. What does this do? So what's our behavior is, negative f of x. So this is going to do a reflection. And how best should we talk about this? So this is going to be a reflection. Our f of x values are the y values. So what we're doing is we're taking the negative of all of our y values. So this is a reflection that's flipping us, right? Positive output, positive y values become negative y values. We're sort of flipping over the horizontal axis. So we're going to do a reflection over the x axis. What happens here is our y values sort of multiply by -1 is maybe how we can say it. Visually, if I was going to sort of draw a little axis, right? What we're doing when we reflect is we're flipping this way. So any sort of positive, if I have a parabola that sort of is graphed up here, if I do the negative version of it, it's going to flip, and it's going to be graphed with the same kind of curve, but down underneath. So a negative out in front gives us this reflection over the x-axis. It's almost like we're turning the whole graph on a rotisserie or something, right? Sort of turning it, I can't really mime it very well, right? Turning it on a rotisserie this way, like we're cooking a chicken or something. The other place where we can put a negative is if we do f of negative x. So if we put the negative inside the parentheses, the idea here again, right, this is a matter of, are we kind of adding at the end of the formula, or rather are we sort of multiplying by -1 at the end of the formula, which would be our sort of first example, or are we sort of putting a negative sign on all of our input values? Are we kind of changing the x values, or are we changing the y values? That's really what's happening here. Our example, so this would sort of be, right, if our original is x squared, we'll just stick with this until it doesn't work as well anymore. So if I do a negative x, right, what happens here is now I'm attaching the negative directly to the x, and then I'm squaring on the outside. So I'm changing the input value, right? I'm not changing the y value. I'm actually ending up changing my x values. What this is going to do is it's going to give us a reflection, and you would probably guess that this is going to reflect us in the other direction. So this is going to be reflection over the y-axis. So this is going to be like a left-right type of reflection. And so what's going to happen in this case is our x values will all be sort of multiplied by -1. If we're thinking of this in terms of a table and having like a list of coordinates, kind of x, y points, we can just sort of change all of our x values, right, from positive to negative and vice versa. keep the y values the same, and that's going to make our new graph. If I'm thinking of this visually, right, so what I'm doing is I'm flipping this over the y-axis. So the y-axis is here, so this flips, right? If I'm changing my x coordinates, so now my positive x values flip and become negative, and sort of vice versa, right? So this is really like a left-right kind of reflection. The one above here is really sort of an up-down kind of reflection, and vice versa. So let's kind of label this section. So these two options, these are our reflections. Right? Reflections like a mirror, right? We're essentially creating mirror images of these graphs, just flipped either sort of over the x-axis or over the y-axis. So those are our two options. We'll do one last thing in a third video.